So, hello and welcome everybody to KE Matters number 16. This is our 16th in a series of member-led sessions exploring topics that are big in industry, knowledge exchange more widely, and some of the big things coming up that's going to affect us all. This week we have Elsevier, we have Sean and Sahar that are going to go into the language of impact, tools for research storytelling. So Elsevier are the leading publishing and analytics company specializing in scientific, medical, and technical subjects. They've already established themselves as bringing great impact communication to academics, industry, and government. And this week, we're going into some of the tools they've just developed to use AI in the telling of impacts across different sectors. So really, really important and I know a very popular topic for us all right now. We'll hand over in a second, hear the presentation. And then just to remind everybody, it is recorded, but we can't see you or anything like that. But if you want to use the chat function to start popping in questions, comments, thoughts, and we do have time at the end to start sort of engaging in those and have a bit of exploration of that discussion. So look forward to that. And as always, want to hear members' thoughts as we go into these really important topics. But for now then, I'd love to thank Sean and Sahar for being here and feel free to hand over to hear about the AI tools that they developed in translating impact. So whenever you're ready, and thanks very much.
Thanks, Ali. Hi, everyone. Morning. So my name is Sahar Al-Bashar. I'm a solutions account manager, and I cover the research intelligence solutions side of things at Elsevier. I work closely with academic and government organisations in the north of England and the Midlands. Prior to actually being at Elsevier, I was also a customer working in the University of Sussex in the research office there. So hopefully what Sean and I will be able to show you today during the webinar is some key examples and some insights that can really support with just tracking impact, discuss a little bit about what we mean by impact and so on and so forth. So what we'd like to cover today is we're going to talk a little bit about, talk about impact, kind of explain about what do we mean by impact, what do we really actually mean by impact. Talk a little bit about how we at Elsevier is using solution to help track and evidence impact data. How the data can support you with knowledge exchange and particularly the KE UK members. We're going to dip deeper into showcasing economic impact and what does that mean and how our solutions can really support you with that. And then we're going to land it with two solutions, key solutions. So we're going to talk about SciVal impact data, and then I'll pass it on to my colleague Sean to talk to you about the new thing that we are working on at the moment. So understanding impact, what do we actually really mean about it? Impact is a very broad term. A lot of the literature states that impact itself is quite broad, and there's a different types of impact. So according to some of the literature out there, it generally refers to the measurable changes or consequences resulting from an activity, intervention, or research. So it could be a number of things, and from impact itself, it draws into different types of branches. So we can be talking about, for instance, assessment of impact, economic impact, societal impact, etc. So it's a very broad term, and it involves different stakeholders in the ecosystem. Practitioners of impact assessment emphasize that research impact extends beyond academia, influencing policy, society, and the economy. So how can that happen? The LSE Impact blog and CIML blog define impact as a demonstrable contribution that research makes to society and economy beyond academia. So the common theme here is that it is linking it to, if we're talking in the context of research, it's understanding what happens beyond sort of the academia ecosystem and whether that research is actually translating to the wider masses. And according to the International School on Research Impact Assessment, effective research impact assessment requires structured methodologies, stakeholder engagement, and ethical considerations. So that's really key because, we recognize impact is very important, but it's actually quite hard to measure and it's quite hard to actually track. So what data is out there to support you and support your organization in trying to track that? So the focus for us here is that we want to take you along kind of the kind of historical element of what we land, how come we ended up landing into impact and research in particular, and focusing on it from the research evaluation and publication impact. Historically, research and evaluation and impact started in the UK. So research evaluation since the 1980s, around 2014. The what used to be called the research excellence exercise has changed into research excellence framework, introducing the impact component. And that was really because just pressure on government and really needing to kind of explain where public money has been going to. So it's like trying to link that research linking research output into sort of the wider society and understanding that a bit more. And in 2021, the last ref has really emphasized more on the impact. And we see the way it's going to go, we feel that it's going to increase more likely so to try and understand and actually becoming more of the evidence impact. And therefore, the more we go towards trying to evidence impact, the more that we need data to support with that. And this is what's likely going to be in the Ref 29. There's again strong component on the impact part of the ref, and at the moment there's discussion around impact and engagement statements. So looking further in terms of engagement studies. And it doesn't just historically with research evaluation and impact, it's not just the UK. The UK actually as a country started the trend, but we are now seeing other countries around the world also adopting more and trying to understand the impact and impact around research. So particularly European nations, so like Germany and the Netherlands, their research evaluation system is similar to the UK. They're a little bit behind in terms of tracking impact or in the capability of how we're doing it in the UK, but they're getting there. Australia and Canada seems to be the one that are quite close to the UK landscape, but it is picking up a lot across the globe. And also added on with the latest thing from the UN. So it's not just nationally, but it's also becoming globally, and we're seeing that organization like the UN becoming more involved in that. So with the UN Sustainable Development Goal, assigning every interaction to certain challenges that humanity is facing. So more and more discussion is actually happening around impact and evidencing impact. But as I said before, it is quite a broad term. So what do we actually really mean in this? From our perspective, and in particular for the Knowledge Exchange UK members, it's certainly thinking around technological transfer, looking at publication impact, looking at cross-sectoral collaboration. So understanding the work and the organization that you support, where can you, understanding data that's around basically economical insight. Ranking leagues tables as well. So educational, higher education world, the ranking leagues are also now getting into the game. So Times Higher Education introduced the impact ranking a few years ago. And that's now we're seeing that more and more universities around the world actually adopting that and moving more towards the impact ranking than actually more so than even the world university ranking itself. QS has also now caught up and they're now also doing, they've got now a ranking data around sustainability. So these conversations are becoming more and more evident. In terms of the UK, so the last government has introduced, in addition to the UK REF, we've got another thing called the UK KEF. This is only for English universities. But the idea behind this is to kind of encourage the universities, and as you are members, you know this more than I do, is to encourage universities on to kind of work more closely with cross-sector collaboration. But equally, how do you then measure that, or how do you track that data? So as an organization, Elsevier, we are one of the data provider and we work really closely with Research England. You may have seen when the KEF data comes out every year, you may have seen the co-authorship metric. So that is actually provided by us and it is available in our solutions. Some of you may have access to those solutions and some of you don't, but if you need any further information, please feel free to ask us. So I'm going to just finalize on this point and really just explain, talk about this. The fact that impact itself it is a very broad term. It is difficult to define, and according to all the literature out there, it is difficult to define. There is a challenge around tracking the data. It can also be quite lengthy as well. And there needs to be measured, the needs for it to be measured, it needs to be done in a very robust and a very responsible way. So just bear that in mind. So in terms of Elsevier and what we have been doing in order to support the ecosystem of tracking impact, we actually work with across the whole system. So in terms of working with different organizations, just to support through our solution. So, we have a group of people who work really closely with academic and government and funders to support in terms of thought leadership work and just really kind of provide high level strategy. So think of it in terms of the select form of interaction with society and how can we help you to evidence that. So we have information around patent data. We look at information around collaboration with industrial partnerships. I've mentioned on the KEF, the co-authorship metric, so we can draw up on that. And there's also information around policy citation, etc. The tools we have supports across the whole ecosystem of research evaluation and the research lifecycle itself. So solutions are there to support researchers, individual researchers, to evidence impact for, say, the REF, or even just for other, one applying for grant application, for instance, looking for opportunities, partnership opportunities outside the academia. We work with funders, and we work also with governments and also corporates as well. In more recent years, we've actually really looked at the whole ecosystem of research, and we've come up with this thing we're calling an academic evaluation framework. And what this diagram is showing is all the kind of little points that actually involves around the research ecosystem and where we position ourselves. So we have data that can support in majority of the cases and what you're seeing on the slide. So I want to talk to you a bit about what we recommend and how we support you. Think about it we call it the dual lens of impact. So it's looking at yourself and others looking at you. So you have your internal view. So this is a managing impact inside your institution. So you've got your own data inside that can support you on that. But then there's also the external view. So it's how others are seeing you, and then whether you have data to support with that. Okay. And here what we talk about is really using that insightful information to support with a really nice storytelling and showcase yourself. So in terms of our portfolio, there's a wide range of it. So it's from showcasing your institutional profile to working with your researchers to showcase their work, to just understanding also the collaborative opportunities across and who you can potentially partner with. And we're now also in the new game of generative AI. So last year we launched Scopus AI, which is scopus.com, which is our database. We launched a Scopus AI version of that. And I won't spoil too much because Sean is going to talk a little bit more about the latest kid on the block. So, but just to give you kind of flavor of where we are actually now going towards. There's also just to kind of also highlight some things that are more kind of on a high level and a strategic level. So as I highlighted before, we've got a group of colleagues who work with senior academics. They work with leadership across the world, government funders, and doing more like on thought leadership work. And we produce on an annually certain report. So one of the report we do produce is around gender. Another one is around AI. And more recently, we've been looking at attitudes around AI. It'd be really useful to just kind of have a look at that one. And one of the latest report we did was we worked with Ipsos to look at the leadership university's leadership point of view. So we called it view from the top. And what this really just shows is what makes basically leaders wake at night and managing universities. And considering the sort of geopolitical climate we're in at the moment, it is definitely worth a read. And again, pointing it down to impact. Universities are time and time being challenged in terms of like showcasing the value of university in a regional area. There's pressures from across the board. So how can our solution actually support and empower you as members, and you can use that to support with your work in your organization? So I touched a little bit about the portfolio side of things. I'm going to skip that one for a little bit. But I want to just kind of highlight, in addition to our solutions, we do have this dedicated team who are the analytical service data team. And they work really closely. So we will work really closely with them, and we work in partnership with organization who want to tap into our data, capability data that's not available in our solutions. And we will basically generate bespoke reports. So feel free to reach out to us if you want any further information on that. Some of the reports we have done in recently is working with UCL to address their economical impact. The same with a few years ago, we actually worked with, so we work with also UN to help them track sustainable development goals. And this year we've actually worked with UKRI, so to look at the kind of innovation and the collaboration segment of the UK. It's free to have a look into this, and you can actually also look at the kind of the landscape. It's very useful data to have a look at. We've also worked with Advanced Oxford in the past as well. And another organisation that we're currently working with is HEPI. And recently where we worked with HEPI to look at the Government 5 mission. Again, that's worth a read, and it's some really insightful data there. So showcasing economic impact, and the reason why I wanted to focus particularly in economic impact is just to demonstrate how our solutions can support your organizations to look for collaborative opportunities and understand your regional also impact as well. So I'm going to start from our basic. Our basic is our database, Scopus.com database. It started in 2004. And Scopus is an abstract and citation database. So it looks at peer review journals that are indexed in Scopus, and a lot of the data from Scopus feeds into our different solutions. So it is actually our core database. It's grown a lot since its launch, and it now hosts around 100+ million records, and it consistently gets updated. So data from Scopus goes into the different things that I've just mentioned. So like the bespoke analytical reports. So for example, this report that we worked with Advanced Oxford a few years ago, and also some of those reports like what we've done for on the government mission and other types of reports as well. And the bulk of it goes into our solutions too. Another one to highlight is the Fourth Gen. And I'll be surprised if in the mix of the attendees right now on the call that you're not aware of the concept of the Fourth Gen University. So we actually worked with TI Eindhoven a few years ago, in fact last year was, and where we produced a report and where TI Eindhoven wanted to understand how they are as a university, they are in terms of the position themselves in the local region. So if we take it back to the KEF and we think about the English universities, a lot of the English universities are being asked to kind of measure that. So some really insightful data there, and we've now moved away from moved ahead of that now, and a real sense of community is now being built around the Fourth Gen. So this conversation is picking up a lot now, and we're seeing that across globally as well. So it's not just us in the UK. Again, there's information on the slide deck here. Through solutions like our SaaS solution Pure, you as your organizations can by adopting Pure can be able to showcase their impact, either through sustainable development goals, through their outputs, and also showcase their collaboration network as well. So quite useful solution there. Through SciVal, you're able to tap into what's currently happening in terms of research trends. So be it at organizational level, even at the research level, organizational level, and nationally, what's happening. What we're seeing here is a wheel of science looking at the landscape of the UK for the last 5 years, and the color coding just shows the kind of the multidisciplinary research that the UK actually tends to produce, and what's currently trending as well from the UK research. You can also look at through the SciVal solution, you can identify who are your collaborators, and you can also compare as well. So what this is showing is a diagram showing how the UK compares across to some other countries. So some of them are in the G7, the US involved in this. And the UK is actually the red blob here. So what this is just showing that the academic corporate collaboration versus academic government collaboration, and then the bubble size shows the research between the institution and medical organization. So although in terms of academic corporate academic government is a bit lower than some of the Austria, Germany or France, but in terms of medical collaboration, it's indicating that we do really well, and I'll be surprised with the NHS Trust. Through the solution called Funding Institution, you're able to track funding opportunities through sustainable development goals. So what we're doing here is linking publication into actually something like a strategic impact like SDGs, and then highlighting the funding opportunities that are happening through that. So funders are also really interested in this as well. Okay. So focusing a little bit on terms of SciVal. So out of the solutions I've highlighted, SciVal is a quite comprehensive analytical platform where basically it allows you to see a summary view of research publication. You can dig deeper into collaborative opportunities, understanding how you can benchmark entity with entity, and more recently track impact data and also look at grant opportunities as well. So if you look at SciVal takes a bulk of its information from Scopus.com, but we also track policy citation from the database Overtone. We track patent information from our sister company called LexisNexis. So the linkage here is through the publication output. So what can one publication output tells you, and whether it's been cited by policy data, by patent offices, news mentions as well, and we're working to expand this based on also industrial partnership and alumni, etc. So it's quite a comprehensive solution. So with SciVal, you'll be able to measure and utilize different metrics to support with understanding the impact of your organization, and particularly through the societal lens as well. So one can actually understand a little bit in terms of the SDGs, how they compare to, say, the country. This is looking at the UK versus the world, and how the UK is contributing to the SDGs. You can actually dig further into, like, say, patent citation. So what this is highlighting for me is what the UK looks like for the last 5 years. And what it's telling me is that 2.5% is being cited in patent data. You can see a geographical view of where the citations are coming from. And where this becomes really useful is, if you think about REF, it can support with evidence and that, but more importantly for the Knowledge Exchange UK organisation and the members, it's a good way to kind of see, okay, patent offices are citing our research or they're citing our organisation. Is there a potential opportunity to work and work more closely together? And the map view gives you an idea where those citations are coming from. So if they're coming a little bit more locally, are they around the world? So you can expand then your collaboration network. And the system does allow you to go further into that and understand a little bit more about the patent application and where. So it gives a really nice little story to say, Okay, these are insightful data that's helped me understand where the pattern citations for the UK is coming from. So I'm going to finish off a little bit with our rule of thumb. The solutions we offer provides insight, and those insights are numbers, and the numbers can turn into a really beautiful story. But our rule of thumb is usually when we're talking about numbers, make sure it's not just one. Think of a holistic picture, and that can provide you a really good narrative story. And always use it with peer review judgment. Okay, so I'm gonna close it here, and I think I'll pass it on to Sean to talk to you about the latest thing. Sean, are you on?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks, Sahar. Thank you very much also to the audience for coming to listen. I want to talk to you about a new initiative we're building at Elsevier, which is using generative AI in this field of impact. And it's something that I've been just interested in for the past decade. I used to work for a company called Interfolio, where I worked with lots of funding agencies, actually, helping them gather data and present impacts. And it was always about the data, of course. But I got more interested in the storytelling aspect of it. And I've always been curious about how we communicate, and particularly how we communicate outside of the institution. We're very good at communicating internally, and the whole field of academic impact is well known and understood. I was curious to see how we could potentially put some form of systematic approach to, or standardized approach to telling the story of impact. Nope, they went from the wrong way. How do I get forward? All right, okay, let's try that. Maybe Sahar, could you move that forward for me? It's not.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Oh, some nice cattle egrets. Okay, so I guess the question I was asking was how do we first of all capture it, and how do we tell that story? And I think, given that there's so much information around, often fragmented, takes place at different times, and as we know, impact happens sometime after the research has happened, and so we need to find a way of gathering that, making it coherent, communicating it in a very relatable way. And so what we've been exploring is the use of AI in this process. Next slide, please, Sahar. Thanks. Yeah, so this is a picture that I actually borrowed off some colleagues at actually a company called ResearchFish, where there's a lot of data gathered around how you get to a particular policy influence. This diagram is trying to show really quite how complex it is just to get a single policy influence. In this particular example, this policy influence, which came about through research, happened over a 6-year period, 4 funding agencies, 3 PIs, 3 research organizations, and 16 or 17 different awards. It's really complicated, okay, but and that's fine. You know, that's just the way life is. We're not trying to simplify it in any way. But what is interesting is that no matter how complicated this is, when it comes to the point of actually telling the story and communicating this, what you find, or what I found, is that there's a remarkably consistent way that people actually communicate. Can you use the next slide, please, Sahar? And the way that people communicate tends to be, they talk about the audience they've reached, they talk about how the research applies to aspects of society, they talk about who they've worked with and who they engaged with, and they talk about how cool the research is, and yes, they talk about the academic significance as well. It's definitely an important factor, and I tried this out over the last sort of year or so with universities all over the world, and what I found was that there was a very strong resonance here, in that this communication aspect, whether you're talking about capacity building or knowledge exchange, or simply just communicating that, you know, the impact to a stakeholder group, when you actually come to the point of saying the words out loud, this is the sort of the set of characteristics of the research that people tend to focus on. Whether you're in Japan or Mexico or South Africa or UK or Belgium, US, it's still the same language. And so that there's something here. And this set of categories was built really after intense consultation with universities and experts in the field of research all over the world. And so next slide, please. So what we thought we would do is we would build on this language model essentially to tell the story using plain language, really, that the public can understand. And if you tell the story through the lens of these different characteristics, you're starting to look at the problem from a number of angles, and you get really interesting perspectives. And the nice thing about being in a company like Elsevier is the sheer breadth and depth of the research information that's available, which we can use to augment the research information that's stored within the institution itself. And so we've decided to build a product. Next slide, please. The reason we decided to build it, well, there's absolutely a need, and this is global, that the need to communicate the societal impact of research that happens inside the institution is becoming of paramount importance. There's plenty of solutions focusing on academic impact, and that's great, and we want to build on that great success. We've built a product which we've given the incredibly imaginative name of Pure Impact AI to it, because it sits on the Pure Research Information Management System, and it's built across these 7 characteristics. And what it does is it turns that complicated data into a set of compelling narratives that people can understand. And the point here is that we're trying to enable, if you like, rapid understanding of the research at scale in order to essentially build a starting point for both people who work in the research office and the researchers to tell their impact story. So I've got a diagram on my next slide, which is a bit complicated, but I'll attempt to explain how it works in terms of the workflow. But essentially, with Impact AI, you can generate narratives around research projects or people, or you can start with a collection of publications, whichever you want. But essentially, you import data from your research information management system, and that's data about people, projects, publications, activities, engagements, and so on. Through the Elsevier ecosystem, we augment that data with patent data from LexisNexis Patent 1. We add policy documentation from Overton, metrics from SciVal, abstracts from Scopus, activity data, including news mentions, social media activity from the Plumex altmetric source. And that all gets put together through AI to generate a set of draft output narratives, which we think need to be reviewed by a human. And so we build in a process to review with a researcher, and those can then be exported either as just an impact narrative or a researcher highlights, or maybe you want to write a blog for the website. Maybe the communications team wants a good news story, and then they can be published on the Pure portal, which is our showcasing application. And so there are a number of applications here. And I've got a small screenshot on the next slide, if you can go to that slide as well, Sahar. And one of the key things that came out of the work we've done is that that people have to have trust in the AI generated narrative. And what you're seeing on this screenshot, there's a couple of things to look at first. So the middle section, there's a short summary narrative which describes the research. And the key thing here is that AIs can be prone to hallucinating. When they don't have enough data, they'll fill a gap with something that sounds plausible, but turns out not to be true. So to counter this, we instruct the AI that if it ever makes a claim, it must back it up with data. And so those red highlighted, they're quite small, but they're inline citation references, and they're listed at the bottom, and so the numbering refers to the references at the bottom. And those references could be publications, they could be policy documents, they could be examples of engagement from your own in-house RIM system. So that was seen as incredibly important. And for each of the characteristics, and you can see those listed on the left-hand side of that screenshot, for each of those particular characteristics, there is a summary narrative, and then the whole lot can be summarized into a particular templated document. So, for example, if you're building a case study, you could put it into that. And then on the right-hand side, there's this, and those of you who are familiar with the Knowledge Exchange framework will recognize this form of presentation. But essentially, it's like a Wi-Fi signal for each of the characteristics to indicate some sort of strength. And if I go to the next slide, I can talk a little bit more about this. What we're trying to do with this thing we're calling the widget, we call it an impact signal widget. Really, it's sort of like shining a spotlight on projects that are more likely to have societal impact than others. And I want to stress the word project. We are acutely aware that that it can be quite sensitive if you were to put a person through this. And certainly the feedback we received over the year was that this could become a contentious point. So we only display this widget when looking at projects and not people. But the point here is that we're trying to just convey a sense of the activity around a particular characteristic. And so actually, Shahar, if you could expand all of this, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Yes, perfect. Underneath this, of course, there are a set of metrics, and these are metrics that you can find in Scopus and SciVal and Plumex and so on. And what we're doing is we're comparing this project with the average values across a particular discipline in a certain territory. This is absolutely not an impact measurement, but it is quite a good proxy for impact. We know, and we've seen this, we've tried this with multiple institutions and funders, that if we have a fuller widget, so that the strong signals across all dimensions, it's a very good proxy for projects that have high impact. We found we can get around 80% success in terms of spotting impact. But of course, we can only measure what we can measure. And so that is caveated. And the other thing is that if you get a smaller widget, it doesn't necessarily indicate low impact. It often indicates lack of data. So, but we do know that when you have a fuller one, it does indicate high impact. So it can be useful if you're searching a portfolio of work and you want to know where to begin. It's not a bad signal to use. And we are very transparent about the algorithm behind it, and I'll happily chat to anyone about that separately. So in the last year, we've worked now with, I think it's 27 universities and funders, mostly universities, in order to refine the way that the AI generates the narratives. What are the important things it needs to present, the use of the widget, and so on. And I've just got a quote here from one of our very early development partners on the next slide, which is from Coventry. And I'll just read it. This is from Laura Noble. She said, "What I found with a tool like this, it's a time-saving thing. I very much saw it as a supplement to our preparation work and our thinking." And that definitely came across from our conversations with them, that again, they could very quickly read the narratives and get a good understanding in order to then have meaningful conversations with the PI. And so she said, I found this tool, Pure Impact AI, extremely useful in overcoming that first hurdle where I am already prepared and I understand more, and that supplements the information we're acquiring ourselves through reading. So we see this as a very helpful tool in getting that starting point. It is it's an AI, and so we do think humans need to be in the loop in order to sanity check. We did have one researcher read the AI generated narrative and quite liked what it had written, but sort of quietly said, "Look, I'm not groundbreaking as the AI suggests." So we told the AI to sort of curb its enthusiasm somewhat. And then the next slide, I've just listed some of the things that our development partners have told us over the last year about what they think the benefits are. The biggest one has been the discovery of unknown outcomes and impacts. Because we're connecting to so many different data sources, and not just the university's own data source, there are these examples of these hidden signals, which are gems. The time-saving one is huge, both in terms of the research office and the researcher, because we're conscious researchers spend ages doing form filling and so on. And so minimizing that burden is great. If you can give them something to review, it's so much easier. It provides multiple, it's a starting point for multiple applications, including potentially running case studies for national assessment exercises. And if you're a researcher and you're applying for a grant, well, why not, have a nicely and concise impact narrative that you can include in that. So that concludes my main presentation. I'll answer a couple of questions I've always asked, so I'll answer those for you now. Number one is, are we training our AI on the university's data? And the answer is no. We don't absorb any information. We're using prompt engineering just to generate the narratives. And the second question I often get asked is, well, why can't I just chuck all this data into ChatGPT and do it myself? And I'm tempted to say you can absolutely do that if you really want to do that. But two things I would say really is that one is that ChatGPT will absorb that data and learn from it. And the second thing is you should use a tool that's fit for purpose. If you're running a project, you probably wouldn't do it in Excel. You'd probably use something like Project. So it's a tool that's been designed with a huge amount of human capital invested in it, in terms of how people who work in research offices think and what they want and so on. And so we have constructed our narratives to deliver exactly really what those kind of individuals and the institutions are looking for in terms of impact narratives. But I'll happily answer any other questions. And final slide, I guess. If you do want to know anything more about what Sahar or I have said today, please either visit that website or scan this QR code. And I think this deck is going to be shared later. And buried in it, hidden somewhere, is information about myself and Sahar, so you can get in touch with us if you want to. But I think that concludes the presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and if there are any questions, I'll happily take them, and so will Sahar.
Thanks very much, both. Really, really interesting, obviously very pertinent topic for today. Really fantastic to hear the sort of background and the technical aspects. We do have a little bit of time if anyone wants to pop a question or comment in. I'll maybe just fire off one or two to give people time in case they get. But as we said, we'll share all information and the links and resources and everything once this goes out. I guess my questions were about how it's sort of been responded to by important stakeholders. So you've talked really well about how you've involved research officers and knowledge exchange staff in the development of the tools. I guess maybe look if any more into that, of maybe what the worries were when you first approached people and were saying this was how they should do their job in the future. Would be interesting to know that, but maybe looking at the wider scale, how people are then starting to use it or could use it to start looking at themes, to understand where in their institution impact is already being developed, where it's maybe being missed, or how it could be used to start to identify sort of pathways to more impact. If you've got any thoughts on that.
For me? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'll go to Sahar for maybe the external question next.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, you're right. I mean, the first thing I'd say is that it's really hard. Impact is really, really hard to get your head around. And there are a lot of people doing really great work in this field. So yes, it was very daunting standing up at a conference about 18 months ago with this crazy idea that we could come up with a language model, because pretty much every organization has a view on how they want to explain their impact. There's either an impact framework, maybe they're focusing on REF, maybe there's a mission the university has. And a good friend of mine often says it's, impact frameworks are like toothbrushes. Everyone has one and nobody wants to use someone else's. And so you think, well, how am I going to stand up in front of an audience of impact specialists and say, oh, I've got this great idea for unifying us all? And that was clearly never going to happen. But what I think we have tapped into is that fundamental human capability of telling stories. And if you think about how humans have told stories for our whole history, we've gathered around fires and we exchange stories, and we do it in compelling ways. And so when I tried this idea of just the characteristics of language, it really seemed to resonate. Now, since then, we have failed multiple times and had some very humiliating experiences. But I think that's what's quite powerful in terms of building up, something that really does work, because, we definitely didn't get it right at the beginning, and Elsevier was kind enough to allow me fairly much free rein to develop this through a sort of a company-sponsored hackathon where we had the first prototype, working with development partners at the beginning of last year, and honing it and getting it wrong multiple times. And I think that the area where we started off thinking that the widget was super smart and clever, and rapidly realized that we were potentially causing problems by displaying a person's widget, and that could have been perceived as being detrimental to their career, because when we showed the widget to people, they loved it. But if there was a small segment, the only question they had was, why is that segment so small? And they focused on that, and that was not the intention. The intention is to use that widget really as a guide to say, well, how can I improve my impact? I'm a little low on collaboration. What is the institution's approach to collaboration? Can we connect this person with more collaborators to boost that, and so on? And so we do see the widget as a project tracking tool as opposed to any kind of evaluation. And it's just a useful guide, but the real magic came in the narratives and allowing people that ability to understand the research quickly. So that's how we've evolved it, I think. And I think what we've got now is something that is it's a very, very useful, I think, quite novel solution to this solution to part of this huge problem.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. And maybe just to finish up, Sahar, you talked really well on the sort of building of relationships between other sectors, especially the UN, that already have maybe communications around impact. It's going to be such a crucial part of talking about impact and sort of explaining the value of what our research is doing across the sector. Maybe just some final thoughts on how that relationship building's gone, and maybe what the sort of priorities are that we could learn from involving some of those bigger external sectors.
Yeah, certainly. So I think it's better to give you an overview in terms of also the different teams working in Elsevier, and the kind of internal collaboration that happens as well. So Elsevier traditionally as an organization, it is a publishing company, but it is also an analytical data company as well. So as part of that group, I've mentioned about the thought leadership work that we do, and so we have a group of people who called the Global Science Network. The excellent group of people who work really, really closely with large organizations and strategic organizations like the UN, like senior leadership in the UK or elsewhere as well, and also funders, government, etc. So the work that's come about with the UN sustainable and particularly around the Sustainable Development Goal, we were when the UN SDGs were developed, we as an organization actually worked with researchers across the globe to define the SDGs in SciVal, and some of that data feeds into the ranking. So from that level, we have a quite close relationship with say large organization like the UN. On a kind of a national level, as I've highlighted in a few of them, so organizations like HEPI, the funders as well, and where we can really work and support in terms of particularly working with, say, the Knowledge Exchange UK members, is to kind of support from that national level and also connect the dot at regional level. And the one of the latest thing that we do see coming up definitely is the fact around the, in particular like in the English universities, around tracking knowledge exchange activity and focusing on the kind of KEF data. So we're kind of working a lot more closely with universities in England on that information, and then just supporting kind of like with helping them with understanding the data to support with their future strategy.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And again, for the whole session, really, really important topic to be looking into, and great to know where the forefront is, including both the the context and now the technical tools for communicating impact. There's a couple sort of specific questions, but I think those are maybe more appropriate for direct contact. So as we said, we'll share some details outside of this for ways to get in touch and follow up about the tool itself and the session. So for the minute, for now, I'd love to say thanks very much to Sean and Sahar, and for a great presentation, and for some of the information we've had there that you can follow up with, and for Rita, who organises KE Matters, and the team around it. So for now, thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.